The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Bruce Lee's hotel room in Hong Kong. It was early May 1971, and the city was already humming with energy despite the early hour. Bruce sat at the edge of his bed, a cup of tea cooling on the nightstand as he stretched his neck and shoulders. The past few years had been a whirlwind, from television success in America to his triumphant return to Hong Kong cinema. At 31 years old, he was now one of the most recognizable martial artists in the world, his face plastered across movie posters throughout Asia. But success had come with its own weight. The constant demands of filming, the pressure to innovate his martial arts philosophy, the expectations of fans and studio executives alike, all of it sat heavily on his shoulders this quiet morning. In just a few hours, he would be meeting with producers about his next film project, another opportunity to showcase his revolutionary approach to martial arts on screen. Bruce checked his watch and sighed. He had time for a morning walk before the meetings began, a chance to clear his head and reconnect with the city of his youth. Hong Kong had changed dramatically in the years he'd been away. New buildings reached toward the sky, and the streets teemed with more people and vehicles than ever before. Yet beneath the rapid modernization, the soul of the city remained, pulsing with the same energy he remembered from childhood. He dressed simply, comfortable pants, a light cotton shirt, and casual shoes, and slipped out of the hotel, nodding to the front desk clerk, who recognized him but respectfully maintained his privacy. Outside, the morning air was thick with humidity, carrying the mixed aromas of street food, exhaust, and the distant scent of the harbor. Bruce walked with purpose, his movements fluid and controlled, even in this mundane activity. Years of training had made grace second nature. As he navigated the increasingly busy streets, Bruce found himself drawn toward the older neighborhoods, away from the gleaming new developments. These narrow streets and weathered buildings held memories of childhood games, early training sessions, his first awkward attempts at romance. Before Hollywood, before fame, before he became the face of a new kind of martial arts cinema, he had just been a boy here, learning and growing and dreaming of what might be possible. Without fully intending to, Bruce realized his feet had carried him to the neighborhood where he had first begun serious martial arts training. Master Ip Man had been his primary Wing Chun teacher, of course, but before that, there had been another, an older man named Liang Wei, who had first introduced a young, restless Bruce to the fundamentals of Kung Fu. Master Liang had been traditional, stern but kind, seeing something in the energetic boy that others had missed. He had laid the foundation upon which Bruce's later training had built. Bruce hadn't thought of Master Liang in years. The last he had heard, the old teacher had retired from active instruction, passing his small school to a nephew. That had been before Bruce left for America, more than a decade ago now. On impulse, he turned down a familiar alley, wondering if the modest building that had housed Liang's school still stood. The neighborhood had changed, less than other parts of the city. The buildings weathered, but largely the same. Bruce slowed as he approached the location of the old school, surprised to see that while the building remained, the school was clearly gone. Where once proud red characters had announced Liang Family Kung Fu, there was now a small grocery, its metal shutters still closed at this early hour. A heaviness settled in Bruce's chest. It was foolish to expect things to remain unchanged, yet the disappearance of this piece of his past affected him more than he would have anticipated. He stood for a moment, remembering lessons learned in the small courtyard that had once existed. Behind the building, lessons not just in movement and technique, but in discipline, respect, and the philosophy that would later inform his own martial arts approach. As Bruce turned to leave, a voice called out from across the street, "Are you looking for Master Liang's school?" Bruce turned to see an elderly woman sweeping the pavement in front of a small tea shop. Her face was deeply lined, her back slightly stooped, but her eyes were sharp and observant. "Yes," Bruce admitted, crossing the street to speak with her. "I trained there as a boy many years ago." The woman's eyes widened slightly as she took a closer look at his face. "You're Bruce Lee," she said, not as a question but as a simple recognition of fact. "Master Liang spoke of you sometimes." "He did?" Bruce was surprised. "Do you know where I might find him now? Is he still in Hong Kong?" The woman, Barbara Jackson, according to the small nameplate on her apron, nodded slowly. "He lives in the Sham Shui Po district now, a small apartment above the noodle shop owned by Daniel Lopez." She hesitated, then added, "He doesn't receive many visitors these days." Something in her tone gave Bruce pause. "Is he unwell?" Barbara sighed, setting her broom aside. "Not sick exactly, but age has not been kind and he is very alone. His wife passed 3 years ago, and his children have all moved away, his son to America, his daughter to Singapore." She studied Bruce's face. He would be pleased to see a former student, especially one who has brought such honor to Chinese martial arts. Bruce thanked her for the information, jotting down the address she provided. His meetings with the producers weren't until the afternoon. There was time to make this unexpected detour. Something compelled him forward, perhaps nostalgia, perhaps a sense of obligation to a teacher who had helped shape his earliest understanding of Kung Fu. The journey to Sham Shui Po took him across the city, from the relatively affluent area where his hotel stood to one of Hong Kong's poorer districts. Here the buildings were crowded together, laundry hanging from windows, the streets narrower and more congested. Bruce kept his head down, hoping to avoid recognition, though a few passers-by did double takes as he passed. He found the Noodle shop without difficulty, a modest establishment with steam billowing from its entrance and the scent of rich broth permeating the air around it. A small side door led to a narrow staircase, the entrance to the apartments above. Bruce hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, suddenly unsure. What if Master Liang didn't remember him? Or worse, what if he remembered but was disappointed in what Bruce had become, a movie star rather than a traditional martial arts master? Pushing these doubts aside, Bruce climbed the stairs. The building was old but clean, with a certain dignity despite its humble appearance. At the top of the first flight, a narrow hallway stretched before him, 4 doors marking separate apartments. Bruce checked the number Barbara had given him and approached the second door. He knocked gently. For a long moment, there was no response, and Bruce wondered if Master Liang might be out. He was about to knock again when he heard movement inside, slow, measured steps approaching the door. The door opened to reveal a man in his late 70s, considerably smaller than Bruce remembered. Master Liang had always been lean and wiry, rather than imposingly powerful, but age had diminished him further. His once straight back was now slightly curved, his shoulders narrower. Yet his eyes, those were unchanged, dark and penetrating, missing nothing. Those eyes widened now in recognition, followed by a brief flash of disbelief. "Little Dragon," he said, using Bruce's childhood nickname in Cantonese. "Is it truly you?" Bruce bowed deeply in the traditional manner of a student to his master. "Yes, Sifu, it is an honor to see you again." For a moment, Master Liang seemed frozen in place. Then, to Bruce's surprise, the old man's eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked them away, composing himself with the discipline of decades, and stepped back from the doorway. "Please," he said simply, "enter my home." The apartment was small but meticulously organized, with simple, well-maintained furniture. What caught Bruce's attention, however, were the walls, covered with newspaper, clippings and photographs. Many, he realized with a start, featured him. Articles about his films, publicity photos, even a few rare training images from his days with Ip Man. "You have followed my career," Bruce said, unable to hide his surprise. Master Liang nodded, gesturing for Bruce to sit at a small table while he prepared tea with practiced movements. Of course, you were always special, little dragon, different from the other boys, more determined, more questioning. A small smile curved his lips. More troublesome too. Bruce laughed, remembering his youthful impatience. I was not always an easy student. The valuable ones rarely are, Master Liang replied, serving the tea with the same grace he had once demonstrated in martial arts forms. His hands trembled slightly with age, but the economy of movement remained. As they drank, Bruce studied his former teacher more carefully. Despite the neat appearance of the apartment, there were signs of hardship. The worn clothes Master Liang wore, the careful way he handled the teacups as if they were precious and irreplaceable. The single light burning through the room was dim. On a small altar in the corner, Bruce noticed a photograph of a woman he recognized as Liang's wife, surrounded by incense holders and a simple offering of fruit. Sifu, Bruce began cautiously, Barbara Jackson at the tea shop mentioned that you live alone now. Master Liang nodded. My Lin left this world 3 summers ago. My son Jonathan Thomas found work with an American company in San Francisco. My daughter Ariel May married a businessman in Singapore. He stated these facts without self-pity, merely as the reality of his situation. This is the way of life. Children grow and go where opportunity leads them. And your school? Bruce asked. I passed by the old building this morning. A shadow crossed the old man's face. I closed it 5 years ago. My nephew showed more interest in modern business than in preserving our family's kung fu lineage. And as my health declined, it became difficult to demonstrate the forms properly. He set down his teacup with careful precision. Some traditions are not meant to survive in the modern world, it seems. The resignation in his voice struck Bruce deeply. Here was a man who had devoted his life to an art form, who had helped shape countless students, reduced to living alone in a tiny apartment, his knowledge and wisdom largely forgotten, except by those, like Bruce, whose lives he had touched. What do you think of my films, Sifu? Bruce asked, genuinely curious. Master Liang had been a traditionalist, and Bruce's approach to martial arts had evolved far from the classical forms. Master, Liang considered the question seriously. At first, I confess I was troubled. You broke with so many conventions, mixed styles that should remain pure. His expression softened. But then I remembered the boy who always asked why, and never accepted, because that is how it is done, as an answer. I came to understand that you were doing what true masters have always done, adapting, evolving, finding your own path. He gestured toward the newspaper clippings. You have brought our arts to the world, shown their beauty and power to those who would never have seen them otherwise. There is honor in this. The old man's approval meant more to Bruce than he had expected. They spoke for nearly an hour, reminiscing about Bruce's early training days, discussing the philosophy behind Jeet Kune Do, Bruce's innovative martial arts approach. Despite his age and isolation, Master Liang's mind remained sharp, his insights profound. As their conversation continued, Bruce became increasingly aware of the conditions in which his former teacher was living. The apartment was clean but sparsely furnished. The kitchen area contained minimal supplies. There was no telephone visible, no television, just a small radio that looked to be several decades old. Master Liang's clothing, while dignified, showed signs of extensive mending. Do you still practice your forms, Sifu? Bruce asked. Every morning, though more slowly now, Master Liang replied with a small smile. The body weakens, but the discipline remains. Would you show me? Bruce requested, standing and moving furniture to clear a small space in the center of the room. Master Liang hesitated, seeming suddenly self-conscious. I am not as I was, little dragon. You would find my movements slow and stiff compared to your memories. I would be honored to see my teacher practice, Bruce insisted gently. After a moment's consideration, Master Liang nodded. He rose carefully and moved to the center of the cleared space. Taking a deep breath, he began one of the fundamental Wing Chun forms, movements Bruce recognized from his earliest training days. The old man's execution was indeed slower than Bruce remembered, his joints less flexible, his balance more cautious. Yet there remained a core of precision, of understanding that transcended the physical limitations of age. Bruce watched with genuine respect, seeing beyond the current limitations to the decades of mastery they represented. When Master Liang finished, slightly out of breath, Bruce bowed deeply. "Thank you, Sifu. There is still much I can learn from watching you." The old man shook his head, but seemed pleased by the respect. "You are kind to an old man's vanity, little dragon." As Bruce prepared to leave, his meeting with the producers, now less than an hour away, he made a decision. Reaching into his wallet, he removed several large bills. "Sifu, would you do me the honor of accepting this? Consider it repayment for lessons I received as a boy, but could not adequately compensate you for at the time." Master Liang's expression closed immediately, pride stiffening his posture. "I do not need charity, even from a former student." "Not charity," Bruce said quickly. "Investment. I am producing my next film myself. Consider this an investment in that project, from one martial artist to another." The old man's eyes narrowed skeptically. "You do not need my money for your films." "Bruce Lee, no, but I need your wisdom," Bruce replied, an idea forming rapidly. "In fact, would you consider serving as a consultant? The film will feature traditional kung fu alongside my modern approach. Having your expertise would ensure we represent the classical forms with proper respect." It was a spontaneous offer, but as soon as Bruce made it, he recognized its value. Master Liang's knowledge was a treasure that deserved preservation and respect, and the old man's keen insights could genuinely enhance the film's authenticity. Master Liang studied Bruce's face, seeming to search for signs of pity or condescension. Finding none, his expression softened slightly. "You were always clever with words, even as a boy," he said with a hint of amusement. "But I am too old to visit movie sets and shout directions at stuntmen." "Not on set," Bruce clarified, the plan crystallizing in his mind. "I would come to you perhaps once a week while I'm in Hong Kong. We would discuss sequences, review choreography, plans. Your input would be invaluable, Sifu." Master Liang was silent for a long moment, weighing the offer. Finally, he gave a small nod. "Very well, but I will expect honest work for honest pay, not courtesy consultations." "I would expect nothing less," Bruce assured him, bowing again. As they said their goodbyes, Bruce made a mental note to speak with his assistant about arranging regular payments to Master Liang, generous consulting fees that would allow the old teacher to live more comfortably without wounding his pride. But already, Bruce was thinking beyond this immediate solution. There was something profoundly wrong about a master of Master Liang's caliber living in isolation and near poverty, his knowledge and contributions fading from memory. Walking back toward his hotel, navigating the crowded streets of Hong Kong, Bruce felt a sense of purpose emerging alongside his film projects and martial arts development. There was something important here. Something about honoring traditions while embracing innovation, about recognizing the foundations upon which new structures were built. By the time he reached his meeting with the producers, Bruce had the beginnings of a plan forming, one that would extend far beyond helping a single aging master, potentially touching the lives of traditional martial arts teachers throughout Hong Kong and beyond. It would require resources, connections, and careful planning, but as Bruce had demonstrated throughout his life, once he set his mind to a goal, very little could stand in his way. The producers noticed something different about him that afternoon. An intensity of focus even beyond his usual passionate commitment to his projects. They couldn't know that while discussing fight choreography and camera angles, part of Bruce Lee's formidable mental energy was already mapping out a new mission to ensure that masters like Liang Wei received the respect, recognition, and support they deserved before their knowledge and wisdom were lost forever. What had begun as a nostalgic morning walk had evolved into something much more significant, the first steps toward what would become Bruce Lee's most meaningful legacy beyond his films and martial arts philosophy. A chance encounter had sparked an awakening, and that awakening would soon move far beyond one teacher and his former student, eventually touching countless lives across continents and generations. The meeting with the producers ran longer than expected, stretching into early evening as they discussed choreography, shooting schedules, and budget considerations for Bruce's next film project. Throughout the discussions, Bruce remained engaged and decisive, yet a part of his mind continued to circle back to the morning's encounter with Master Liang. The image of his former teacher, still dignified but diminished by age and circumstance, persisted, like an afterimage, behind his eyes. As the meeting concluded, Bruce shook hands with the executives and promised to review the contracts his attorney would receive the following day. Outside the production company's offices, the Hong Kong evening was alive with neon lights and bustling crowds. Rather than returning directly to his hotel, Bruce found a quiet tea house where he could gather his thoughts. Sitting at a corner table with a pot of oolong, Bruce pulled out a small notebook he carried for jotting down training ideas and film concepts. This time, however, he began sketching out something entirely different, the framework for what he tentatively called the Master's Foundation. The concept was straightforward in principle: create an organization dedicated to identifying aging martial arts masters facing financial hardship and providing them with support while documenting their knowledge for future generations. The execution, however, would be complex, requiring funding, proper vetting processes, and a structure that preserved the dignity of the masters being helped. Too many of our greatest teachers die in obscurity, Bruce wrote, underlining the sentence twice. Their wisdom lost, their contributions forgotten. He was still making notes when a shadow fell across his table. Looking up, Bruce found himself facing Dennis Porter, a Hong Kong-based American journalist who had interviewed him several times for martial arts publications. "I thought that was you," Dennis said with a smile. "Mind if I join you, or are you in the middle of creative genius?" Bruce gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Please, I could use another perspective on something." Dennis sat, ordering a tea from the passing server. "Something for the new film?" "No," Bruce said, surprising himself with his candor. "Something more personal." Briefly, Bruce described his encounter with Master Liang, careful to protect the old teacher's privacy while conveying the essence of the situation. Dennis listened attentively, his reporter's instincts clearly engaged by the human interest elements of the story. "So I'm considering establishing some kind of foundation," Bruce concluded, "not just for Master Liang, but for others like him. These men devoted their lives to preserving and teaching traditional martial arts. They deserve better than to be forgotten." Dennis nodded thoughtfully. "It's a worthy cause, but to make it work, you'll need more than just your own resources. This would require substantial ongoing funding." "I know," Bruce acknowledged. "I was thinking of approaching some of the film studios. They profit from martial arts films. Perhaps they could be persuaded to give something back to the tradition." "That's one approach," Dennis agreed. "But you might consider something more public. Something that would engage not just corporations, but everyday people who admire martial arts." The idea resonated with Bruce immediately. "A demonstration," he said, the concept taking shape rapidly. "A public exhibition featuring these masters alongside contemporary practitioners, showing the lineage, the connection between traditional forms and modern applications." Dennis's eyes lit up. That could work beautifully. Ticket sales would generate immediate funds, and the publicity would raise awareness for ongoing support. Plus, it would give these masters a chance to be seen and appreciated again, to share their knowledge with a broader audience. As they discussed the logistics, Bruce's energy and enthusiasm grew. This wasn't just about helping one aging teacher. It was about honoring a legacy and ensuring its continuation. By the time they parted ways 2 hours later, the outline of the plan had solidified into something actionable. The next morning, Bruce woke early, energized despite the minimal sleep. After his usual training routine, modified to fit the constraints of his hotel room, he made several phone calls, setting appointments with potential supporters for his nascent foundation. By midday, he was back in Sham Shui Po, climbing the narrow stairs to Master Liang's apartment. This time, his former teacher answered the door more promptly, clearly having been expecting him. "Little dragon," Master Liang greeted him, stepping back to allow entry. "You return so soon." "I have a proposition to discuss," Bruce replied, following him inside. He noticed small changes in the apartment since yesterday: fresh fruit on the altar, a new tea canister on the counter. Master Liang had already put some of yesterday's money to use, though modestly. As they settled with tea, Bruce outlined his concept for the Master's Foundation and the demonstration event. Master Liang listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful but guarded. "And you wish me to participate in this exhibition?" he asked when Bruce finished. "Yes, Sifu. To demonstrate traditional forms, perhaps alongside some of your former students, to show the continuity of the art." Master Liang set down his teacup with deliberate care. "There was a time when I would have refused such an offer. Immediately. Public demonstrations were for those seeking students or fame, not for serious practitioners." He gazed at the photograph of his wife on the altar. "But age brings perspective. What good is knowledge preserved if it dies with its keeper?" "Then you'll consider it?" Bruce asked. "I will do more than consider it. I will participate," Master Liang decided. "On one condition. Name it. This cannot be charity disguised as cultural preservation. If I demonstrate, I do so as a master, not as an object of pity." "Of course, Sifu," Bruce assured him. "This is about honoring your knowledge and contributions, not your current circumstances." Master Liang studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Very well. When would this event take place?" "I'm thinking 3 weeks from now," Bruce replied. "Enough time to organize properly and build interest, but soon enough that I can be involved directly before filming takes me back to international locations." The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Between his film preparations and organizing the Masters exhibition, Bruce barely had time to sleep. He leveraged every connection he had in Hong Kong, from film industry contacts to childhood friends who had become successful businessmen. Jill Vaughan, a British expatriate who owned a public relations firm, volunteered her company's services to promote the event. Cole Harris, whose family owned one of Hong Kong's largest indoor venues, offered the space at a nominal fee. Douglas Myers, a wealthy martial arts enthusiast, agreed to underwrite the production costs so that all proceeds could go directly to the foundation. But the most challenging aspect was identifying and approaching other masters who might benefit from the foundation's support. For this, Bruce needed Master Liang's help. "Many will refuse out of pride," Master Liang warned during one of their planning meetings. "To admit need is difficult for men who have been respected authorities their entire lives." "How do we approach them then?" Bruce asked. Master Liang considered the question. "Through respect, offer them roles as honored teachers, not as recipients of charity. The financial support should come later, after trust has been established." Following this advice, Bruce and Master Liang reached out to 5 other elderly masters, experts in different traditional Chinese martial arts who had fallen on hard times. 3 agreed to participate in the exhibition. 2 weeks before the event, During a rehearsal in a rented studio space, Bruce watched with profound respect as Master Liang led the other elderly teachers through a coordination of their demonstrations. Despite their advanced ages and various physical limitations, their command of their respective arts remained evident in every precise movement. Master Yang, a 72-year-old expert in praying mantis kung fu, executed a complex form with meticulous attention to detail, his gnarled hands perfectly positioned despite the arthritis that had swollen his knuckles. Master Chen of Bagua demonstrated the circular walking patterns characteristic of his style, his balance impeccable despite his reliance on a cane when not practicing. Master Wong, at 81, the oldest of the group, moved through Tai Chi, forms with a fluidity that belied his years. "Look at how they come alive when they practice," Dana Jackson, one of the event organizers, commented quietly to Bruce as they observed. Bruce nodded. This is who they truly are, not old men struggling to survive, but living treasures of knowledge and skill. As the rehearsal concluded, Bruce gathered everyone for tea and discussion. The conversation flowed more easily now than in their first meetings, the initial wariness giving way to professional camaraderie and shared purpose. "We have confirmed participants from 7 modern schools as well," Bruce informed them. "Each will demonstrate how traditional foundations inform contemporary practice." He turned to Master Liang. "Would you be willing to demonstrate alongside me, Sifu, to show how your early teaching influenced the development of my approach?" Murmur of interest ran through the group. Despite his international fame, Bruce had rarely spoken publicly about his earliest training, focusing instead on his studies with Ip Man and his later developments. Master Liang seemed surprised by the request. "My contribution to your development was minimal, little dragon, a foundation only." "Foundations determine everything built upon them," Bruce replied. "Without your early guidance, I might never have found my path. The audience should understand this connection between generations of knowledge." After a moment's consideration, Master Liang nodded his agreement. As preparations continued, word of the exhibition spread throughout Hong Kong's martial arts community. What had begun as a modest fundraising demonstration evolved into a significant cultural event. Tickets sold out within days of being announced. Additional sponsors came forward, including a major television station that requested permission to broadcast the event. 1 week before the exhibition, Bruce visited Master Liang's apartment to find the old teacher entertaining an unexpected guest, Nicole Reed, a journalist from an international martial arts magazine. "Ms. Reed is writing a profile about me," Master Liang explained, seeming both embarrassed and pleased by the attention. "Apparently, there is interest in my teaching methods and philosophy." Nicole smiled at Bruce. "Master Liang has been sharing fascinating insights about the development of Wing Chun in Hong Kong during the post-war period. Historical information that might otherwise be lost. This is exactly what we hoped would happen," Bruce said. "Recognition of the knowledge these masters hold." After Nicole departed, promising to return for a longer interview, Master Liang turned to Bruce with an expression of wonder. "In 50 years of teaching," he said quietly, "no one has ever asked to record my perspectives on the art for publication. I had assumed whatever insights I possessed would die with me." "That's the true purpose of the foundation," Bruce told him. "Not just financial support, but preservation of wisdom that deserves to endure." 3 days before the exhibition, disaster nearly struck. Master Liang called Bruce early in the morning, his voice strained with pain. "I have fallen," he admitted reluctantly. "My hip, I cannot perform the forms properly." Bruce rushed to Sham, Shui Po, finding his teacher confined to bed, his face drawn with discomfort. A doctor, Alyssa Anderson, according to her introduction, was just concluding her examination. "Nothing broken," she assured them both, "but severe bruising and strain." He needs rest and should avoid strenuous movement for at least 2 weeks. After she left, Master Liang looked devastated. I have failed you, little dragon. I cannot participate in the exhibition. The exhibition will adapt, Bruce said firmly. Your presence is what matters, not your physical demonstration. An idea was already forming in his mind, one that would require adjustments to the program, but might ultimately prove even more powerful than their original plan. The night of the exhibition arrived with mounting excitement. The venue was filled to capacity, cameras positioned to broadcast the event to thousands more across Hong Kong. Backstage, the participants prepared. Young martial artists limbering up, modern masters reviewing their routines, the elderly teachers being treated with profound respect by all. Master Liang sat in a place of honor, uncomfortable with the attention, yet moved by the deference shown to him and his peers. His hip remained painful, but he had insisted on being present, using a traditional walking stick for support. As Bruce moved between groups, ensuring everything was in readiness, he overheard conversations that confirmed the importance of what they were doing. Young practitioners were asking questions of the elderly masters, absorbing insights that might otherwise have been lost. Modern teachers were acknowledging the foundations upon which their innovations were built. It's working, Emily Bender, one of Bruce's assistants, observed as she helped adjust the seating arrangement. Even before the public demonstration, you've already achieved something meaningful here. Bruce nodded, watching as Master Wong explained a subtle detail of hand positioning to an attentive young practitioner. This is just the beginning. At precisely 7 o'clock, the house lights dimmed. Bruce Lee stepped onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause from an audience eager to see the martial arts movie star in person. But rather than beginning with a demonstration of his own remarkable skills, Bruce began to speak about heritage, respect, and the debt owed to those who preserve traditional knowledge. Tonight, he concluded, we honor the masters who came before us, those who maintained ancient wisdom through war, hardship, and dramatic social change. Their names may not be famous, but their impact lives on in every practitioner who follows. The path they kept open. With these words, Bruce invited the elderly masters to join him on stage, helping Master Liang to the center position despite his injury. The audience, expecting dynamic physical demonstrations, instead found themselves witnessing something far more powerful, a moment of profound intergenerational respect that moved many to tears. What followed was unlike any martial arts exhibition Hong Kong had seen before. Rather than simply showcasing physical prowess, the event told a story, the evolution of traditional Chinese martial arts into their modern expressions, with clear lines drawn between the ancient forms and their contemporary applications. And at the heart of it all was the relationship between teachers and students, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next, embodied most visibly in the interactions between Bruce Lee and Master Liang Wei. The exhibition unfolded like a living tapestry of martial arts history. After the introduction of the masters, the demonstrations began with the oldest traditional forms, Master Wong performing the slow, deliberate movements of ancient Tai Chi, his advanced age falling away as he moved with grace and intention that captivated the audience. What made this exhibition unique was the narrative approach. Rather than isolated demonstrations, each segment flowed into the next, showing the evolution and connection between styles. After Master Wong completed his form, his youngest student, a man in his 50s, demonstrated how these same principles applied in a slightly more dynamic context. This pattern continued across different traditions, building a visual history of Chinese martial arts. Throughout the event, Bruce served as both narrator and participant, contextualizing each demonstration for the audience while showing profound respect to every master who took the stage. The cameras, captured not just the physical demonstrations, but the moments of interaction between generations of practitioners, the bow of respect, the silent acknowledgement of lineage, the continuity of knowledge. When it came time for the Wing Chun segment, Bruce helped Master Liang to center stage. The old teacher moved carefully, mindful of his injured hip. A murmur of concern rippled through the audience, many of whom had come expecting dynamic, physical demonstrations. Bruce addressed the crowd directly. Master Liang suffered an injury recently and cannot perform the physical forms today, but martial arts mastery exists in more than just the body. It lives in the mind, the spirit, and most importantly, in what is passed to the next generation. With that introduction, Bruce did something unprecedented. Rather than performing himself, he brought forward two other practitioners, one middle-aged and one young, both former students of Master Liang from different eras. Together they demonstrated the core Wing Chun forms, while Master Liang directed subtle adjustments with his walking stick and verbal cues. "Elbow in, Alex Beasley," he called to the younger demonstrator. "Intent precedes movement, Corey Anderson," he reminded the older student. The audience watched in fascination as these small corrections transformed already impressive movements into expressions of deeper understanding. It was a masterclass in the subtleties that separate mere physical execution from true martial artistry. When the Wing Chun demonstration concluded, Bruce returned to center stage. Instead of continuing to the next segment as planned, he made a spontaneous decision that would become the most talked about moment of the evening. "I would like to share something personal," he said, the microphone carrying his voice throughout the hall. "When I was 12 years old, angry and directionless, it was Master Liang who first showed me that martial arts could be more than fighting, that they contained philosophy, discipline, and a path toward understanding oneself." Bruce turned toward his former teacher. Master Liang saw potential in a troubled boy when others saw only problems. The foundation he built, the first principles he instilled, remain with me today in everything I do. With that, Bruce began to perform one of the basic forms Master Liang had taught him as a child. It was far simpler than the dynamic, lightning-fast techniques that had made him famous, but he executed it with the same precision and focus he brought to his most advanced demonstrations. As he moved, he called out the teaching points, "Master." Liang had drilled into him decades earlier. Stability begins in the stance. Power originates from the center. Awareness precedes action. The audience sat in rapt attention, witnessing not just physical movement, but the living connection between teacher and student across time. The visible thread of knowledge passed down and transformed while still honoring its source. When Bruce completed the form, he bowed deeply to Master Liang. The old teacher's eyes shone with emotion as he returned the bow from his seated position. The moment transcended the exhibition itself, becoming a powerful symbol of respect for traditional knowledge in a rapidly modernizing world. Cameras flashed as journalists recognized the significance of what they were witnessing. The remainder of the exhibition continued with demonstrations from contemporary schools, each acknowledging their traditional roots while showcasing their unique developments. The event concluded with all participants on stage together, the elderly masters seated in positions of honor, the current generation of teachers standing behind them, and the youngest practitioners forming the final row. The visual representation of martial arts lineage brought the audience to their feet in thunderous applause. As the formal exhibition ended and the audience began to disperse, something unexpected happened. Instead of rushing to meet Bruce Lee, the celebrity, many attendees approached the elderly masters, asking questions and expressing gratitude for their preservation of traditional knowledge. Journalists who had come to cover Bruce's appearance found themselves equally interested in the stories of these previously unknown teachers. Backstage, amid the buzz of conversation and congratulations, Bruce found a quiet moment with Master Liang. "You have done a remarkable thing here, little dragon," the old teacher said, "though I suspect you didn't anticipate quite this level of response." Bruce smiled, watching as Master Wong patiently explained a fine point of technique to a circle of attentive young practitioners. "I hoped for something meaningful, but this exceeded my expectations." "Because it was authentic," Master Liang observed. "Not a performance created for entertainment, but a genuine expression of respect and heritage." Before they could continue their conversation, they were approached by James Thompson, the owner of a major Hong Kong television station. "Mr. Lee, Master Liang," Thompson greeted them with a respectful bow. "That was extraordinary, truly moving. I'd like to discuss turning this into a regular series, perhaps monthly demonstrations featuring different traditional masters and their contributions to martial arts development." Bruce glanced at Master Liang, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "We would be interested in exploring that possibility," Bruce replied, "provided the focus remains on educational value rather than mere entertainment." "Of course," Thompson agreed, readily. Cultural preservation with Master Lee as the bridge between traditional and contemporary approaches. The audience response tonight proves their substantial interest in this more substantive treatment of martial arts. After Thompson left with promises to have contracts drafted, Master Liang looked at Bruce with an expression of wonder. "When you appeared at my door last week, I thought perhaps you were offering a momentary kindness to an old teacher," he said, quietly. "I never imagined it would lead to this." "Neither did I," Bruce admitted. "But perhaps that's how the most meaningful paths reveal themselves. Not through careful planning, but through following what feels right in the moment." The days following the exhibition brought an avalanche of media coverage and public interest. Articles appeared not just in martial arts publications, but in mainstream newspapers and magazines throughout Asia. The focus, to Bruce's satisfaction, centered not on him, but on the masters and the foundation being established to support them. Donations began pouring in, from wealthy businessmen, international corporations seeking to demonstrate cultural respect, and perhaps most touchingly, from ordinary martial arts practitioners of limited means who recognize the value of preserving traditional knowledge. Christopher Fletcher, a wealthy American martial arts enthusiast who had attended the exhibition, offered to establish a permanent endowment for the foundation. "My training changed my life," he told Bruce during a meeting at his hotel. "Supporting the masters who preserve these traditions is the least I can do in return." 1 week after the exhibition, Bruce arranged a meeting of all the participating masters at a respected tea house in central Hong Kong. The atmosphere was markedly different from their first gathering. Gone was the wariness and uncertainty, replaced by cautious optimism and budding camaraderie. The foundation has secured initial funding of over 2 million Hong Kong dollars, Bruce informed them. This will provide immediate support for housing, medical care, and living expenses for eligible masters, as well as funding for documentation and teaching opportunities. Master Wong, the eldest of the group, leaned forward. "And who determines which masters are eligible?" he asked, the wariness not entirely gone from his manner. "You do," Bruce replied simply. "A council of recognized masters will oversee the Foundation's operations and make all decisions regarding support and recognition. My role is merely to provide the initial structure and funding connections." This answer visibly satisfied the assembled teachers, addressing their concern about maintaining autonomy and dignity within the support system being created. As the meeting continued, Bruce outlined the next phases of the Foundation's development. A. documentation project to record traditional techniques and teaching methods, a series of public demonstrations to maintain awareness and interest, and partnerships with existing martial arts schools to create teaching opportunities for masters who wish to remain active. What you have initiated here extends beyond financial support, Master Chen observed. You are creating a system for preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. That is the true purpose, Bruce agreed. The financial support is necessary, but secondary to the preservation of your wisdom and experience. As the masters discussed the details, Bruce found himself slightly removed from the conversation, watching with satisfaction as these once isolated teachers began forming connections with each other, sharing concerns and suggestions with increasing animation. What had begun as an effort to help his former teacher had expanded into something with far greater potential. After the meeting concluded, Master Liang remained behind with Bruce as the others departed. "You look tired, little dragon," the old teacher observed. Bruce smiled ruefully. "Film preparations continue alongside foundation work. There are not enough hours in the day." "You must balance your energy," Master Liang cautioned. "Even the strongest flame will extinguish if it burns too intensely." "I know," Bruce acknowledged, "but this work feels essential in a way that's difficult to explain." Master Liang nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps because it connects all aspects of your journey, the traditional foundation, your innovations, your fame, your desire to transform martial arts understanding. This project is a completion of a circle." The insight struck Bruce with its accuracy. His martial philosophy of Jeet Kune Do emphasized transcending formal limitations while respecting classical contributions. Absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. This foundation work embodied those same principles on a larger scale. 2 days later, Bruce visited Master Liang at his apartment to find a surprising transformation underway. The tiny space was filled with activity. 3 young martial arts students carefully recording as Master Liang demonstrated subtle hand techniques from the Wing Chun system. Gregory Wiggins, a videographer hired by the foundation, was capturing the session on film, while Jennifer Mullins, a graduate student in cultural preservation, took detailed notes. Master Liang, despite his still healing hip, appeared energized by the process, his explanations precise and thorough as he shared knowledge accumulated over decades. The students listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed their genuine interest in understanding rather than merely copying movements. "I see the documentation process has begun," Bruce observed after watching silently from the doorway. Master Liang looked up, pleasure evident in his expression. "These young people are surprisingly knowledgeable in their questions. Teaching them is satisfying." Bruce smiled, recognizing the renewed purpose in his former teacher's bearing. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen, not just financial support, but a restoration of meaning and connection. Later, as the documentation session concluded and the team packed their equipment, Jennifer approached Bruce with obvious excitement. "We're discovering details about Wing Chun development that aren't recorded in any existing texts," she told him. Master Liang's perspective on how the art evolved during the challenging post-war period is invaluable historical information. "Make sure it's preserved in his name," Bruce instructed. "Proper attribution is essential to the Foundation's mission." That evening, Bruce received a call from Douglas Myers, who had been helping coordinate the business aspects of the Foundation's establishment. "The response continues to grow," Douglas reported. "We've received inquiries from martial arts organizations in Taiwan, Singapore, and even Europe. Everyone wants to know how they can implement similar programs in their regions. 6 months had passed since that fateful morning walk through Hong Kong's older neighborhoods. Bruce stood at the window of his hotel suite, gazing out at Victoria Harbour as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the water. The view was spectacular, but his attention was focused on the document spread across the desk behind him, the quarterly report for what had now become the International Masters Recognition Foundation. What had begun as a personal mission to help one aging teacher had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. The foundation now operated in 7 countries across Asia, with developing branches in Europe and North America. The structure remained true to its original concept: financial support coupled with knowledge preservation, all overseen by councils of masters themselves. A knock at the door interrupted his reflection. Justin Murphy, the foundation's newly appointed executive director, entered with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "The final numbers for the Hong Kong Center," Justin said, placing the portfolio on the desk. "We've exceeded the funding target by 30%. The documentary series is generating substantial revenue, all of which goes back into the foundation's endowment." Bruce nodded, unsurprised by the success. The documentary series, Living Treasures of Martial Arts, had become an unexpected cultural phenomenon, broadcasting the knowledge and stories of traditional masters to international audiences. What had begun as a simple documentation project had evolved into compelling viewing that attracted martial arts enthusiasts and general audiences alike. And the masters themselves? Bruce asked, more concerned with their well-being than the financial metrics. Justin smiled. "See for yourself. The new community center opens tomorrow. Most of them are there now, preparing for the ceremony." The community center had been Master Liang's idea, a place where aging masters could live in proximity to each other, with dedicated spaces for teaching, documentation, and community engagement. Rather than isolated apartments scattered across the city, they would have a shared environment that honored their status while enabling continued contribution to martial arts knowledge. An hour later, Bruce arrived at the center located in a renovated building in Kowloon. The exterior maintained traditional Chinese architectural elements, while the interior had been modernized with elder-friendly features and state-of-the-art teaching facilities. Inside, the central courtyard was abuzz with activity as final preparations were made for the next day's grand opening. Masters, students, and staff moved purposefully through the space, hanging banners, arranging seating, and testing sound equipment. Bruce spotted Master Liang, directing the placement of a traditional lion dance costume with the authority of a film director managing a complex scene. The transformation in his former teacher over these months had been remarkable. Though still physically limited by age and his partially healed hip, Master Liang had reclaimed his role as a respected teacher and knowledge keeper. Now serving as the head of the Masters Council for Hong Kong, he approached his responsibilities with the same meticulous attention he had once brought to martial arts instruction. "Sifu," Bruce called, approaching with a respectful bow. "Master," Ling turned, his face brightening. "Little dragon, we did not expect you until tomorrow's ceremony. I wanted to see the real preparations, not just the polished final presentation," Bruce replied with a smile. Master Liang nodded approvingly. "Still the observant student. Come, let me show you what we've created." Over the next hour, Master Liang guided Bruce through the center, pointing out features designed specifically to honor and preserve traditional knowledge. There were teaching halls with special flooring gentle on aging joints, a library where oral histories were being transcribed and archived, and comfortable residential quarters that allowed for both community and privacy. Most impressive was the Hall of Lineage, a museum-like space where the histories of various martial arts traditions were displayed through photographs, artifacts, and interactive exhibits. Each tradition was traced from its earliest known origins through its development and current practice, with special emphasis on the living masters who maintained these lineages. This was Darrell Reynolds' concept, Master Liang explained, referring to a museum curator who had volunteered his expertise to the foundation. He understood that preserving context is as important as preserving technique. As they continued their tour, they encountered other masters engaged in various activities throughout the center. Master Wong was recording detailed explanations of Tai Chi principles with Daniel Tate, a doctoral student researching traditional Chinese medicine. Master Chen was working with Walter Lyons, a film preservation specialist, to restore footage of his teacher's demonstrations from the 1950s. Master Zhao, a recent addition to the community, was consulting with Leah Macmillan on the proper terminology. For a book translating classical martial arts texts, they have purpose again, Bruce observed quietly. Not just survival, but meaningful contribution. Master Liang nodded. This is the true achievement of your foundation, Little Dragon. Not the buildings or the funding, but the restoration of respect and purpose. They made their way to the residential garden, a tranquil space designed for relaxation and gentle practice. Several of the masters were gathered there, engaged in light conversation over tea. Bruce was struck by the comfortable camaraderie among men who, months earlier, had been isolated in their separate struggles. Master Wong waved them over, making space at the stone table. "Join us, Bruce Lee. We were just discussing the impact of your recent film on public perception of traditional martial arts." Bruce sat, accepting the offered tea with a small bow. "I hope the portrayal was respectful." "More than respectful," Master Chen interjected. "Educational. You showed the deeper principles, not merely the external movements. My grandchildren finally understand why I insist on precision in fundamentals." The conversation flowed easily, touching on films, teaching methodologies, and the philosophical underpinnings of various martial arts systems. Bruce found himself not as the famous movie star in this circle, but as a younger practitioner among elders, still learning from their accumulated wisdom. After tea, Master Liang suggested they visit the documentation studio, where the day's recording sessions were concluding. As they walked, he updated Bruce on recent developments. Kevin West completed the first comprehensive archive of Southern Praying Mantis techniques last month, he reported. 5 masters, each with slightly different interpretations of the system, all recorded and annotated. Material that might have disappeared within a decade is now preserved for centuries. The documentation studio occupied what had once been a warehouse space, now transformed with proper lighting, multiple camera setups, and areas for both demonstration and detailed explanation. As they entered, Lisa Avila, the technical director, was reviewing footage with an elderly master Bruce didn't recognize. Master Sun is one of only 3 living practitioners of Iron Ox system, Master Liang explained. We located him living in a remote village on the mainland, his knowledge almost completely unknown outside his immediate area. Master Sun, upon noticing their entrance, rose respectfully, bowing to both Master Liang and Bruce. Though he must have been well into his 70s, his movements displayed the particular controlled power characteristic of the traditional, hard, Chinese styles. "It is an honor to meet you, Bruce Lee," he said in accented Cantonese. "Your foundation has given my life's work meaning in its final chapter." The simple statement, delivered without sentimentality but with evident sincerity, encapsulated everything the foundation had been created to achieve. Later that evening, a small dinner was held for the masters and key foundation staff in the center's communal dining room. The atmosphere was relaxed and familial, with none of the formality that would characterize the next day's official opening. Looking around the table at the animated conversations, the shared jokes, the occasional good-natured disagreements over technical details, Bruce was struck by how much like a family this community had become. After dinner, as the gathering broke into smaller conversational groups, Bruce found himself beside Richard Hines, a martial arts historian who had been documenting the life. "Stories of the masters. Do you realize what you've accomplished here?" Richard asked, gesturing subtly toward the room at large. "A comfortable retirement for deserving teachers?" Bruce suggested, though he knew it was far more. Richard shook his head. "You've created the first comprehensive, living archive of traditional Chinese martial arts knowledge. Not just the techniques, but the context, the philosophy, the lived experience of these traditions. Historians and practitioners centuries. From now, we'll study what we're preserving here," Bruce nodded, humbled by the scope of what had grown from that chance morning encounter. "It was Master Liang who deserves the credit. Seeing him that day made me realize what we risk losing when we don't honor our teachers. And yet it took someone with your unique position to transform that realization into action," Richard countered. "Your fame opened doors, but your sincere respect for tradition is what convinced these masters to participate." Before Bruce could respond, a hush fell over the room. Master Wong had risen from his seat and was tapping his glass for attention. "Tomorrow," the elderly teacher began, "there will be speeches from officials and celebrities. There will be journalists and photographers. Everything will be very proper and impressive." His eyes twinkled with mischief. "Tonight, however, belongs to us. And I believe it is time we showed our young benefactor that these old bones still remember how to celebrate." From somewhere, instruments appeared, a traditional erhu, drums, cymbals. With surprising energy, Master Wong began to demonstrate the rarely seen drunken monkey style, his movements playful yet precisely controlled. The other masters joined in, each contributing elements from their respective systems in an impromptu demonstration that blended seamlessly into a kind of martial arts celebration. Bruce watched in delight as these men, many of whom had been living in isolated poverty just months ago, transformed through the joy of their art. Even Master Liang, mindful of his hip, performed seated techniques with evident pleasure. The years seemed to fall away from them all as they expressed through movement what words could never fully capture. Later, as the impromptu performance concluded and the evening wound down, Bruce found a quiet moment with Master Liang in the garden. "Thank you," his former teacher said simply. "For what, Sifu?" Bruce asked. "You are the one sharing your knowledge," Master Liang smiled. "For seeing an old man on an ordinary day and recognizing what remained beneath the surface." He gestured toward the center around them. All of this began with that moment of true seeing. Bruce nodded, understanding the deeper truth in Master Liang's words. In a world increasingly focused on the new and the novel, the ability to recognize and honor the value of traditional wisdom was perhaps becoming a rare skill in itself. The next morning, the official opening ceremony proceeded with all the expected formality. Government officials gave speeches about cultural preservation, celebrities offered endorsements, journalists captured carefully staged demonstrations. It was, by conventional standards, a tremendous success for the Foundation and its mission. Yet for Bruce, the true moment of triumph had been the previous night's spontaneous celebration, the genuine joy of masters reclaiming not just comfort and security, but purpose and community in their final years. As the Foundation expanded internationally in the years that followed, Bruce would insist that each new center include not just practical support and documentation facilities, but spaces designed specifically for community and shared practice. The knowledge lives not just in the movements or the words, he often explained, but in the connections between those who carry this wisdom. What had begun as one man recognizing his teacher on a Hong Kong street had evolved into a movement that would ultimately preserve countless martial arts traditions that might otherwise have been lost. More importantly, it had transformed the final years of hundreds of masters from isolation and hardship into periods of respect, purpose, and legacy building. And for Bruce Lee himself, beyond his revolutionary martial arts philosophy and his groundbreaking films, the Masters Recognition Foundation would stand as perhaps his most enduring contribution, a bridge between past and future, tradition and innovation, built on the fundamental principle that had guided his own development. Honor your roots while reaching for new possibilities. As Master Liang had observed that first day, it was all about recognition, seeing the true value in what might otherwise be overlooked or forgotten. In that recognition lay not just preservation of the past, but the seeds of future growth, a legacy in perpetual motion.